What up, everyone? Shaq here for EDM.com, and there is a drum and bass revolution underway. So, on the heels of Deadbeats and DNBNL present D&B, we've got creative director of Brownies and Lemonade, Chad Kenny, label manager at Deadbeats, Harrison Bennett, to talk about, this sort of, for me, unexpected, just like storm of drum and bass that we've seen over the last year. Now, before we get there, guys, I do have a question for Chad. I hope this doesn't come off as unprofessional, but you indirectly started quite the debate amongst me and my colleagues. Does the B in DNBNL stand for bass, brownies, or both?
Well, see that is a choose your own adventure type of question to answer yourself. It's funny. We were doing live streams coming out of the pandemic on Twitch, and our host Hannah Rad, we were talking about DNB 2020, and of course BNL is the is what we're known as for those who are in the know. And she just came out with the DNBNL sort of gem, and she's an absolute pro. So I said, hey, Hannah, borrow that. All right. But I will always credit you with every interview I do for years from now. So
I was gonna say we at least got to get some royalties or something, credit her.
Yeah,
But I like a shout out. I appreciate being consistent on that.
absolutely.
Now, Harrison, compilation albums always like pique my curiosity because I imagine the process of getting the project together is very different than working with, one artist. For you, what goes into the process of helping to curate a collab album? How do you sort of decide on the puzzle pieces of who works with who, and most importantly, trying to keep it sort of as a synchronized, cohesive piece of work?
Well, this one took a lot longer than most of the compilation projects that I do work on. In the past, we usually assemble these over the course of about 6 months. Try to plan out as far as possible so that everybody's got schedules synced up, and we give ourselves enough lead time to kind of fine tune any issues that may come along, whether it's artwork or final mixes and masters of the tracks or people having last minute scheduling issues or whatever. So we just try to set them as far in advance as possible. This project, though, we started about 2.5 years ago, just as a kind of an idea that we were batting around with the Brownies and Lemonade team. And we didn't really set a fine deadline for it. We were just like, when we get the number of tracks that we're happy with, we'll just kind of work from there. And so, yeah, I mean, again, like probably with like a 6 month kind of timeline, I think around the end of last summer, we were like, okay, let's do this. And originally we had a plan for the end of November to come out. But a couple of last minute things kind of got thrown our way, and everything always works out anyway. So we actually ended up with a couple of extra tracks that we wouldn't have had otherwise. And just kind of worked that way. So it all kind of worked itself out in the wash eventually, but it's definitely a monster of an undertaking to get 15 different artists or so, all their schedules synced up, make sure you got the open windows. And really from a label side, it's about being as flexible as possible and just kind of making yourself as available as possible to all these artists.
Very quickly, what's one sort of standout track that's spoken most to each of you?
Well, I'll take that one first. I really like what Blank's done with the Aeon Mode project. Touch for me, I think as a single for us has been a lot of people are really impressed by that one. Also, Subsonic Feel Your Touch, another one of the singles that I know my team was really, really hyped on. Subsonic, an artist that not a lot of people may be as familiar with as other artists on this compilation. Yeah, so those are two for me that are standouts.
Yeah, I think the first track that we actually put out that kind of led into this compilation was a collab between Bensley and Denmo. And that was a really cool record for me. I had heard a demo for that maybe about a year and a half ago, and then pushing the guys to get this wrapped up and finished up. And it's a really, really cool dynamic record that stands out amongst a lot of the drum and bass that I've been hearing lately. and it's been getting a lot of support and play from a lot of bigger DJs. Like Andy C, I think, was playing it out. Dimension as well. And I think Sub Focus actually played it too. Like it's just been getting like a lot of kind of crazy support on it. And then I'm also really happy with the Zed's Dead and Reaper record that we got done, which came together very, very quickly over the span of about 2 or 3 weeks. And just really, really happy with how that one turned out.
Absolutely.
Speaking of Zed's Dead, you might want to let the boys know they actually almost ruined my wedding because Zed's Dead is my favorite. I'm not saying this because you're here. They are my favorite artists, and I'm based in Vancouver. And Shambhala just so happened to fall on our wedding date. So there was a very serious discussion. Actually, it was mostly the wife who was trying to cancel the wedding and go.
That's wonderful. Well,
They caused plenty of problems in my marriage too, so it's fine.
Yeah.
It's okay. We can leave those questions for after the interview.
I hope your event was more worthwhile. You could just say
it went off without a hitch, and we played a little bit of Zed's Dead at the wedding.
Oh, there you go. Okay, I've covered your bases.
So, yeah. And it was always next year. It was always next year. Oh yes, Chad. I feel like I don't know. Do you like the word tastemaker? I'm not a big fan of.
I'm very used to it. So yes, I'm very accustomed to that. Yeah.
Not my favorite term. I don't know why, but I do feel like Brownies and Lemonade really has their finger on the pulse of what's going on in electronic music and live event spaces. For you, what have you sort of identified as the catalyst for this big boom in drum and bass music that we're seeing shift over from Europe into the US and Canada?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And again, I don't shy away from Tastemaker. I understand that a lot of what Brownies Lemonade has provided for the scene is somewhat intangible. Like you can point to some of the artists that we've done, but the ways in which, when we discover them, trends and things and waves that come in and out, a lot of it is making the taste more tangible for a wider audience, especially when people go to physical events. With drum and bass, I don't think that sound in itself was as nebulous or foreign to the North American culture. When you go back into the 90s, I mean, house and drum and bass are the foundational pieces of electronic music in America. And you can even go back to my childhood. The Powerpuff Girls theme song is just a drum and bass heater. You go back to PlayStation 1 and all of these things that you don't realize because they're not in the foreground. But even still, there were some crossover records that were on the radio growing up that had UK garage kind of feel. Daniel Bedingfield comes to one, Breaks is present. So I think that it was there. The seeds have always been there in North American culture, but for it to permeate and be something where Fred again is going to be on the main stage playing drum and bass, or Marshmello is going to be playing drum and bass. It was a matter of time for some of these artists to kind of step up in the last couple of years and just say, hey, I'm going to make a whole set with this kind of stuff. Joyride playing a drum and bass set at EDC. Or, hey, I'm going to have like a 30-minute segment of drum and bass and I'm just going to go for it, And I think those kinds of moments, especially in the live space, have helped a lot.
As a PlayStation kid, I got to know, are there any soundtracks that come to mind when you mentioned that?
Well, the Ape Escape soundtrack on PlayStation 1 is awesome. It's got a lot of that kind of ethereal kind of breaks kind of. I literally, I'm not even kidding.
The most mundane questions lead to the best answers.
I was gonna say the Wipeout, the Wipeout soundtrack as well is pretty key for that.
Absolutely, Wipeout, and that's one other thing I should mention real quick is YouTube has always been for me the best indication of culture really bubbling, and there are so many breaks, jungle, and drum and bass compilations from 90s video games and stuff just popping up on YouTube all the time. The algorithm, whether it be if it's at EDC or if it's in someone's bedroom when they're gaming, is feeding us drum and bass all the time right now.
I've got some playlists to go hunt for now.
Yes.
You're melding some. This has been very informative already. Thank you guys. 10 minutes.
Oh, of course.
Back to you, Chad, very quickly. we talked about sort of the influence that Brownies and Lemonade has had on the live events scene, sort of melding up and coming artists, becoming sort of a thing that more renowned artists want to be involved with. For you, I feel like for Brownies and Lemonade, I feel like community is a very big part of what makes this function. What is the secret sauce into making Brownies and Lemonade something that people want to be involved with? Obviously, we don't want to give away the entire recipe, but whatever you want to share there.
Well, that's a great question. I think obviously identity has always been tied to music and community. And I think that coming out of the pandemic, especially, but we saw it prior during the SoundCloud golden age. Music was this adhesive where people felt like if you cared and had a little bit, you're more detail oriented with your listening. Like it said something about your values and like about the way you approach life. And LA is so diverse, it really embodied that. But I know, in Toronto and a lot of the areas in which Deadbeats, started and the Zed's Dead guys and where they've gone in different markets in the United States as well. That's why we work really well with Deadbeats, is because we identify something that they're doing, especially with their events and their music, that it caters to a certain kind of person that just goes a little bit deeper under the surface to care about music and then kind of what that exemplifies. And I think that dance music gets fairly so sometimes a bad rap for being very frivolous about certain things, but there's enough people out there who want that little more in their experience. And I think that's what we've been able to do with like our events. And we see a lot of parallels with what, Deadbeats does as well in that regard.
Yeah, Harrison, anything to add there about the parallels?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that it's a cool kind of like when I first came across Brownies and Lemonade, I think the first time we worked together was 2018. And I saw, some clips online of their parties that were going on in LA, and we're based in Toronto, and immediately I was like, this just looks like such a fun event. Like the way things were running and the way they were curating things, it just seemed so unique and kind of needed at the time. And they've done a really, really good job of fostering relationships with artists, both like from the start of the artist projects, as well as extremely big artists like Skrillex, for example. They have such a close relationship with a lot of these acts that they can kind of call them up at a moment's notice, like within a week, and be like, hey, we're throwing this party in a random warehouse. Do you want to come out here? No, we're not announcing you on the lineup. And the artist doesn't care about that, and the fans that show up don't care about that.
Yeah.
And that's just such a unique kind of angle to have in this scene. From the Deadbeat side of things, we've always been very, very careful about making sure that the artists that we work with do feel like they're part of this kind of family, so to speak, and that they feel like they're supported on both the release level and the live touring side, and then merchandise or whatever it is that the artist kind of wants to help develop their presence in the markets. And so we kind of found a very kindred spirit in what Brownies does on that level. So it's really cool because we're in separate countries and separate sides of either country too. It's so we've found this like very great working relationship with that team over the years. And I think more and more promoters are taking note of what the Brownies folks have been doing, and hopefully what Deadbeats has been doing as well, and started to kind of model themselves in that fashion too, because ultimately we're here in service of the music and the artists and the fans. And we want everybody to have a great time, and we want everybody to have a great time repeatedly. And really the only way to do that is just kind of this rising tide floats all boats type practice with everything. And we can all get bigger together, because at the end of the day, we're representative of bass music, which is inherently underground, especially in North America. It's not getting played on the radio. It's not like the most playlisted stuff on DSPs. We're all kind of in here fighting the good fight for underground artists and trying to give them as big of a platform as possible.
Yeah,
Chad,
and one thing I'll add.
sorry,
Can I add one thing to that real quick? Also, because Harrison made he said exactly kind of what I was thinking as well. But it's important to know that this is the first release that Brownies and Lemonade has ever done on streaming, and as a music release in general. And we were very selective about it, but Deadbeats really shared those values as artist advocates, within bass music. And so I think from what they were doing from the label side and what we do on live, it was just, that harmony
Perfect
in
match.
that regard.
I love
Yeah.
it. As we begin to wrap up here, guys, I know I don't want to keep you too long over our time. Um, Chad, what are some of the, live events are always sort of an economically difficult business to succeed, and it's tremendous the work you guys have done. What are some of the risks or stakes associated with like your brand of renegade pop-up raves that people might not really understand?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of risks in terms of, safety and obviously, things getting shut down or whatever. If you do things in a non-traditional capacity, if you do things in a renegade sort of way, obviously, with most of our events, it's the way that we go about it is traditional and permitted and completely legit. But sometimes we'll do something a little bit more left of center, a little bit more secret, and kind of harkening back to our warehouse days.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of risk also is not just like at the event. It's kind of like putting your brand in a way where it's perception. A lot of things are perception, right? So a lot of people may have heard the name Brownies Lemonade, but they think that we're this, huge events company, and the huge is the subjective part, right?
Yeah.
Is it infrastructure? Is it your social media following? So when they come to maybe a renegade pop up with ISOXO in the middle of San Francisco in a abandoned bunker, I think some people think, well, is this a produced event? And I think a lot of people are surprised to see how real and in the community what we're doing is. I think the question is whether big promoters still have the ability to do things that are that renegade and that sort of like open for the community. We try to strike a nice balance. But yeah, that's a challenge that I think a lot of promoters will face, because the bigger you go, the more out of touch you may become with your core audience.
Two more here. We'll call it a day. Harrison, I find year after year, it's when I go to a show and maybe some of my friends are newer to the scene, like, oh, what kind of artist this is? I'm starting to have a hard time like pegging down subgenres, because I feel, especially like in the internet age, artists are drawing so many influences from other genres, other parts of the world, other subgenres. With this sort of focus on drum and bass, what's kind of the long-term vision for Deadbeats as you continue to sort of expand your sound, the roster?
Deadbeats was always kind of made to be uh kind of a mirror of what a Zed's Dead set is like, right? Because it's a Zed's Dead label. And they're very genre agnostic and very fluid across whatever they're playing. Deadbeats is going to kind of continue being in that realm. We're going to do a little bit of dubstep, a little bit of drum and bass, maybe some house music. We're going to be all over the place. Very hard to pin down. I also have a very hard time of kind of keeping track of all the different subgenres. I've reverted to just calling everything dubstep at this point.
As have I.
I'll do that, and much to the chagrin of everybody else, I'll continue to do that. Except for drum and bass is very separate, obviously, and then house music has a clear lane, but there's three genres in my opinion. That's all that exists.
I love that. I had to submit my sort of like annual EDM song by genre awards, and my managing editor gets back to me. He's like, "Hey man, these are great picks. You got all of the genres wrong though, so I'm gonna have to reshuffle them for you." And I'm like,
Oh yeah, I didn't know what Vapor Twitch was, but apparently it's always my number
like,
one most listened to genre.
Same every year. It's my number one most played genre. You'd have no idea what it is.
I had to read an article about what it meant, and I still walked away with questions. So
okay, well, I feel I'm relatively new to electronic music relative to a lot of my peers, so this is actually very comforting information to know that I'm not just an absolute scrub. So I appreciate that.
Right.
Good music is good music. There's no need to
Thank you.
kind of classify. I mean, if you're a music journalist, then sure, but otherwise, like if you're putting a playlist together, it's just like, what's the flow?
Harrison, is it a complete travesty that I've yet to watch Pulp Fiction?
you're missing out. Like
Really.
definitely should set aside 3 hours or however long that movie
I
is.
don't know
Well,
if
that
you
was
could
Watch
see
amazing.
one
this
Sunday.
right here is actually original
There you
art
go.
of Pulp
Hey.
Fiction by my favorite artist, Future Fantasy Delight. Shout out. So if that's any
Oh,
indication, if you should watch it.
well, then the synergy is perfect. Then this really was a match in heaven between those two artists.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Last thing for you, Chad. I was reading about how sort of Skrillex was like sort of a casual second invite to one of your art gallery pop-ups, and how that sort of really got the momentum rolling in a new way. Is there another sort of like crazy or funny or unexpected artist collab or encounter that you've had while producing these shows?
Oh
Start with
man,
you.
so many. 21 Savage came and performed at one of our Red Bull events. That was weird because TMZ came to the show, so that was a first. He
Oh,
had just started dating Amber Rose at the time, so I was like, "Oh, okay, so we're really going for the LA thing now." There's been all kinds of pop-ins, and actually another Skrillex story that was really cool. We were doing a show with him and Dog Blood in Miami in 2019. And towards the end of the set, Sonny is just like absolutely on top of an elevated platform per usual, with the reverse on the decks technique. And this guy comes up and just plugs in a flash drive, and everyone's kind of like, wait, what's going on here? Sonny turns around. This guy plays Skrillex Cinema Remix, right? It's Benny Benassi. It was like one of the most like unbelievable moments. They play the whole song, they're hugging, and to my knowledge, it's the first time they ever played that song together
really?
live. Yeah, yeah. So that was a wonderful moment. Yeah, there's
Musicians are
plenty.
rare breed.
It'll be in my
Those
book
little
one day.
moments.
Don't worry.
Love it. Okay, that'll be a great book. I'm looking forward to it. Guys, that's all the time we have today. I want to leave you with the last word. So very quickly for me, guys, thanks for checking out the video. If you can, please subscribe, tap the bell, thumbs up, all that good stuff. Check out the full feature with Chad Kenny, Harrison Bennett, EDM.com. We'll have it linked below. Guys, if there's anything you want to sort of leave us with, whether it's Deadbeats and DNBNL present drum and bass, what is that B in the middle for? We'll never quite know. The floor is yours, guys.
Go
Kristen,
stream
go
the
ahead.
compilation. It's out
That's
now.
exactly what I was going to say too.